You think you know the story of Narnia. You remember the magic of the fur coats in the wardrobe, the impossible light of the lamppost in the snow, the civilized talking animals, and the glorious destiny of 4 children becoming kings and queens in a land of eternal summer. It is packaged as the ultimate children's fantasy, a story of pure hope, objective bravery, and the magical triumph of good over a clearly defined evil. But this is a sanitized reading. This is the version sold to you to mask the profound, dark, and psychologically violent truth at the story's core. The true hidden story of Narnia is not about magic. It is about shame. Tonight, on Umbral Fables, we are pushing past the wardrobe door to investigate the shadows of the kingdom. This is Narnia, the true horror of Aslan's kingdom. We are not here to talk about the battles or the destiny. We are here to talk about the psychological trauma of Edmund Pevensie. The lore of Narnia is not an adventure. It is a clinical, terrifying, and methodical examination of a young mind being systematically broken by temptation, corrupted by addiction, and finally shattered by witnessing a deity figure's ritualistic public execution, all in his name. This is the shame of the title. To understand this, we must first look at the context. The Pevensie children are not adventurers seeking excitement. They are refugees. They are traumatized evacuees of the London Blitz, sent away from their parents to escape the real horror of bombs falling from the sky. They are already victims of a world war before they ever find the magical one. They flee the trauma of a global conflict only to be thrust into the center of another. The wardrobe is not an escape. It is a liminal space, a threshold like the backrooms that leads from one state of anxiety to another. The story of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is a Gnostic text disguised as a children's book. It presents a world that is fundamentally flawed, ruled by 2 opposing absolute forces. On one side, we have the White Witch, Jadis. She is not a simple villain. She is the personification of totalitarianism. She represents the static state, a world of cold, rational control, where everything is frozen in an endless winter, but never Christmas. Christmas, the symbol of renewal and birth, is outlawed. Her evil is the evil of stagnation, a world where nothing ever happens, enforced by a secret police, Fenris Ulf, and a weapon that doesn't kill, but silences, turning dissenters into stone statues for her collection. She is the horror of the police state, the cold logic of the 1940s regimes that C.S. Lewis so feared. On the other side, we have the lion, Aslan. He is not a tame force of comfort. He is described as wild. He is the personification of the deep magic, a form of absolute cosmic law that is ancient, non-negotiable, and terrifying. He is the deity figure who operates on a level of power that is incomprehensible to humans, much like a Lovecraftian entity, but aligned with good. Into this cosmic battle between 2 absolutes, total control versus wild magic, walks Edmund. Edmund is the only real human in the story. Peter is too noble, Susan too practical, Lucy too pure. Edmund is flawed. He is the middle child, petty, jealous, bullied, and insecure. He is the audience surrogate. He is the one who falls. And the story is not about the war. It is about the state of his soul. The witch does not want Narnia. She wants Edmund's shame. Aslan does not just want victory. He wants to absolve that shame through a terrifying blood price. The entire universe of Narnia, in this first crucial installment, revolves around the psychological fracturing and eventual traumatic rebuilding of one broken, guilty boy. The true horror of Narnia begins not with a battle, but with a conversation. Edmund, lost and alone in the snow, meets the White Witch Jadis. She does not immediately threaten him. She does not attack. She performs an act of profound, calculated psychological manipulation. This is the grooming of a vulnerable soul. She finds a child who is angry, resentful of his older brother, and feeling isolated. He is the middle child, psychologically primed for any external validation. The witch does not offer him power. She offers him comfort. She conjures a magical, enchanted Turkish delight. This is not merely a magic food in the style of a fairy tale. Within the allegorical structure of the story, It is the physical, consumable manifestation of addiction. It is the ultimate info hazard, like the basilisk, but biological. Let us analyze the properties of this drug. The text describes the sweet as being warm, a critical detail in a land of endless freezing snow. It is a narcotic that provides a false sense of security. More importantly, it is enchanted to be insatiably desirable. The more Edmund eats, the more he needs to eat. It is a loop of desire that overwhelms all other functions: his loyalty, his reason, his family bonds. The witch, a master of this dark psychology, does not force Edmund to betray his siblings. She conditions him to. She links the ultimate pleasure, the sweet, to a simple command: bring me your brother and sisters. She is not just buying his loyalty, she is rewiring his brain, creating a chemical dependency that only she can satisfy. This is the horror of the trap. Edmund is not just a bad boy who makes a wrong choice. He is a victim. He is a child addict being manipulated by a predator who has identified his weakness, his shame, his feeling of being less than Peter, and is exploiting it with a substance. This allegory is far darker than the cinematic adaptations dare to show. The manjar turco represents the easiness of corruption. It is the promise of instant gratification, the escape from the cold, hard reality, both of the London Blitz and the Narnian snow, into a warm, sugary, self-obsessed haze. While he is eating, Edmund forgets his family. He forgets the war. He forgets everything but the immediate tactile pleasure of the food. This is the psychological state of the addict. The witch, by offering this, proves she is not just a tyrant of ice. She is a master of the human soul. She understands that the easiest way to break a human being is not to freeze their body, but to enslave their will to a desire they cannot control. Edmund's fall is not a simple act of greed. It is a clinical depiction of a mind being hijacked by a foreign substance, engineered by a malevolent intelligence. The shame of the title begins here. The shame of knowing you sold your family's lives, not for gold or power, but for one more bite of candy. It is the ultimate humiliating reduction of human free will. The true horror is that the witch knew this would work, because she knows that a soul already weakened by shame and jealousy has no immune system against the promise of easy comfort. The true, insidious nature of the addiction, the Turkish Delight, is revealed not during its consumption, but in its immediate psychological aftermath. Edmund is now a compromised agent. He has been activated by the witch, and his primary motivation shifts from family loyalty to securing his next fix. This is where C.S. Lewis's writing is at its most psychologically brutal and accurate. Edmund returns to his siblings and engages in a profound act of denial and gaslighting. When Lucy speaks of Narnia, Edmund, who knows she is telling the truth, sides with the older siblings and lies, claiming it was just a game. This is the shame of the title becoming an active, corrosive force. He lies to protect his supply line to the witch. He cannot bear for his siblings to discover his secret alliance, not because he fears punishment, but because he fears they will stop him from getting more of the enchanted sweet. His shame makes him cruel. He isolates Lucy, the most innocent, to protect his own corruption. This act severs his connection to the harmony of his family unit. He is no longer a Pevensie. He is an agent of the witch, operating inside his own home. This leads to his inevitable journey to the witch's castle. This journey is not a heroic quest. It is the bleak, desperate walk of an addict. He sneaks away from his siblings, driven by the memory of the sweet, convinced that the witch will reward him with more, perhaps even make him a prince. This is the delusion of the user, the belief that the dealer is their friend. The landscape itself reflects his internal state. He is traveling through the endless cold snow, alone, heading toward a promise that feels warm but is, in reality, the source of the cold. The true horror, the Umbral Fables thesis, is revealed the moment he arrives at the castle. He finds not a warm, welcoming palace, but a fortress of pure, cold, dead stone. The courtyard is a grotesque sculpture garden of his own future. It is filled with the stone statues of Narnians who defied the witch, the dissenters she froze. He sees a stone lion, stone fawns, stone giants. This is not a home. It is a mass grave, a monument to the witch's totalitarian power. This visual should have been the ultimate warning, a clear sign that this is the house of death, not comfort. But the addiction is stronger than the evidence. The shame and the need have rendered him blind to the obvious. He pushes past the statues of the dead, ignoring the evidence, and enters the throne room. There, he finds Jadis. The mask of comfort is gone. The warm, maternal figure from the sleigh has been replaced by the cold, enraged tyrant. There is no warmth, no praise, and most terrifyingly, no more Turkish delight. His reward for delivering the news that all 4 Pevensies are now in Narnia is a piece of stale, dry bread and a cup of water. This is the ultimate, brutal bait and switch of addiction and betrayal. The promise was magic. The reality is stale bread. The witch promised to make him a king. She treats him like a prisoner. This moment is the shattering of Edmund's delusion. He has sold his soul for nothing. He was not a partner. He was a tool. He was a disposable asset that has outlived its usefulness. The true shame now crystallizes. He is trapped in the house of the monster he helped, and he has led his entire family into the same trap. The true horrifying climax of Edmund's psychological journey does not happen on a battlefield. It happens in the dead of night, at a place of ancient, cold, cosmic power, the stone table. This is the narrative's pivot point, the moment the shame of the title transitions from a personal, internal feeling into an absolute metaphysical fact. To understand the horror of this scene, we must first understand the deep magic, the fundamental operating system of the Narnian universe. The deep magic is not a tool. It is a law, as cold, impersonal, and non-negotiable as the laws of physics in our own world. And this magic, as the White Witch rightly states, is written into the fabric of Narnia. Every act of betrayal, every act of treachery, forfeits the life of the traitor to her. She is not just a tyrant, she is the designated legal executioner for this specific law. This is the moment Edmund's abstract betrayal becomes a concrete reality. He is a traitor. He has broken the cosmic law. Therefore, his life, his very essence, belongs to the witch. This is the ultimate shame, the realization that your mistake was not just a moral failing, but a cosmic one that has permanently altered your status in the universe. You are no longer a free agent. You are property. When the witch arrives at Aslan's camp to claim her prize, the horror is in the legality of her claim. She is not wrong. She is operating within the rules. Aslan, the deity figure, does not dispute the law. He acknowledges its power. This is a terrifying concept. A universe governed by a deep magic that is so rigid it prioritizes the letter of the law, the traitor's price, over the spirit of the law, the potential for mercy or redemption. This forces the bargain. Aslan, the embodiment of good, cannot violate the deep magic, so he offers the ultimate loophole. A substitute. He offers his life in exchange for Edmund's. The witch agrees, not understanding the deeper magic from before the dawn of time, but reveling in the immediate tactical victory of executing her rival. This is where the true lifelong psychological trauma for Edmund is forged. He is rescued, but the price of his rescue is the public, humiliating, ritualistic execution of his savior. The cinematic adaptations often shield the children from this event. The book is clear. Susan and Lucy witness it. And Edmund, though not physically present, knows it is happening. He is the cause. The ritual itself is a masterpiece of psychological degradation. The witch's horde, the dark rabble of Narnia, is unleashed upon the deity figure. They do not just perform an execution, they perform an act of profound humiliation. They shave his mane, a symbolic act of humiliation, stealing his identity, his royalty, and his power. They bind him, the wild, to the cold, static stone table. They mock him, they celebrate his helplessness. This is the horror of the mob, the glee of the corrupt celebrating the fall of the pure. The final act, the terrible fate, is the extinguishing of the great life. This is the shame of the title made manifest. Edmund, The jealous, petty, addicted boy who just wanted some candy and some status must now live with the unpayable debt. He must live with the knowledge that the purest being in the universe was bound, shorn, and systematically extinguished for him. His small, selfish act of treachery had a cosmic-level consequence. This is a psychological scar that can never heal. It is a burden far heavier than any guilt. The execution of the deity figure at the stone table is the climax of the law. But the true, definitive horror of the Narnian universe is revealed in the subsequent moment, the deeper magic. As the sun rises, the stone table, the very foundation of the deep magic of treachery, cracks and shatters. This is not just a reversal, it is a cosmic reset. It is the revelation of a loophole, a hidden clause in the universal contract. The deeper magic from before the dawn of time dictates that if a willing, innocent victim who has committed no treachery offers their life in place of a traitor, the table will break and death itself will start working backwards. This concept is philosophically staggering. It implies that the universe of Narnia is not just a battle between good and evil, but a complex legalistic system of rules, where one, older, more powerful law can be used to override another. Aslan, in his omniscience, knew this. He did not just die for Edmund, he deliberately exploited this cosmic loophole to simultaneously satisfy the law, a life was taken, and destroy the law's mechanism, the table. This act is a checkmate against the witch, who only understood the superficial rules of treachery, not the foundational physics of sacrifice. But we are not here to analyze the victory. We are here to analyze the shame. What is the psychological effect of this event on Edmund Pevensie? It is the most profound and permanent trauma imaginable. The initial shame was horrifying enough. My savior was publicly humiliated and executed to pay for my mistake. But the resurrection makes this infinitely worse. It adds a new, crushing layer of psychological weight. The shame is no longer, he died for me. The new eternal shame is, my debt was so vast, it required a God to not only die but to break the laws of reality to absolve it. Edmund is not just forgiven, he is now the living recipient of an ontological miracle. His existence is a walking paradox, a testament to a broken law. This debt is unpayable. How do you repay someone who died for you? Perhaps over a lifetime of service you could try. But how do you repay a being who conquered death itself for you? The ledger can never be balanced. The shame of the title is now complete. It is no longer a feeling of guilt. It is a permanent, structural part of Edmund's identity. This transforms his relationship with Aslan from one of awe to one of absolute, terrifying servitude. Aslan is no longer just a kind leader. He is the literal embodiment of the cosmic law that holds Edmund's soul in its grasp. He is the master who paid an infinite price for a broken piece of property. Every day that Edmund lives, every breath he takes, is a gift from this entity. This explains his entire future. When Edmund is crowned King Edmund the Just, this is not a mere title. It is a psychological compulsion. He spends the rest of his life, his golden age, in a state of obsessive, manic hypervigilance, attempting to be just enough to prove he was worth the price. He is forever haunted by the memory of the stone table. He must be just, because the slightest moral failing reactivates the shame, the knowledge that he is inherently the traitor who cost the universe its God for a moment. He is the ultimate example of survivor's guilt, but on a divine scale. Aslan did not just forgive Edmund, he weaponized Edmund's guilt and turned it into the bedrock of Narnian justice. The Golden Age of Narnia is the narrative's next phase, and for Edmund, it is the beginning of his true sentence. The 4 children are brought to the castle by the sea, Cair Paravel, and crowned kings and queens. This is the fulfillment of the prophecy. But for Edmund, it is the beginning of his psychological imprisonment. Peter is crowned King Peter the Magnificent. Susan is Queen Susan the Gentle. Lucy is Queen Lucy the Valiant. These are titles of inherent character and virtue. Edmund, however, is given a title that is fundamentally different: King Edmund the Just. This title is not a description of his personality. It is a description of his job. It is a perpetual command. It is the literal embodiment of the unpayable debt he owes to Aslan. His entire life, his entire reign during the golden age of Narnia, is a performance of penance. He must at all times be the just, the balancer of scales, the wise judge, the arbiter of disputes, precisely because he was the one who was profoundly unjust. This is the true horror of his shame. His crown is not a symbol of power, it is a symbol of his ultimate failure and his eternal servitude to the memory of the stone table. His deep understanding of treachery, jealousy, and manipulation, the very flaws that led him to the witch, are what make him an effective king. He can spot a liar because he was one. He can dispense true justice because he understands, intimately, the nature of crime. He becomes the dark, necessary shadow to Peter's bright, magnificent sun. But imagine the psychological weight of this existence. Every decision he makes, every law he passes must be weighed against the memory of Aslan's sacrifice. He is not free. He is the least free man in Narnia. A single selfish act, a single moment of anger or injustice, would not just be a political mistake, it would be a metaphysical failure. It would prove that Aslan's sacrifice was in vain, that the witch was right about him all along. He is in effect a king trapped in a perpetual state of psychological probation, ruled by the ghost of his own guilt. The golden age of Narnia, therefore, is not a simple utopia. It is a complex kingdom built upon the foundation of one boy's successful, lifelong, and agonizing management of his own trauma and shame. Aslan did not just forgive Edmund. He weaponized Edmund's guilt and turned it into the bedrock of Narnian justice. The narrative of the lion, the witch, and the wardrobe does not conclude with the coronation. The story continues into the Golden Age, a 15-year reign where the Pevensie children grow from evacuees into adult kings and queens. They become legends. Peter becomes a great warrior, Susan a great diplomat, Lucy a healer, and Edmund, the just, a respected judge and counselor. They fight wars, establish laws, and crucially, they age. They become men and women in their late 20s or early 30s. They have lived an entire second, formative life. They have forgotten the Blitz, forgotten their parents, forgotten the very concept of England. Narnia is their reality. This setup is the mechanism for the story's second, and perhaps most cruel psychological trauma, the return. While hunting the white stag, the four monarchs stumble upon the lamppost, the border of their world. They feel a strange sensation, a forgotten memory. They push past the fur coats, and in a single, disorienting, instantaneous moment, they fall back into Professor Kirk's house. This is not a triumphant homecoming. It is a profound, metaphysical violation. This is the Umbral Fables thesis of the backrooms in reverse. It is not a no-clip out of reality. It is a no-clip back in. But the reality they return to is no longer theirs. The immediate horror is biological and dysphoric. In 1 second, they are adults, strong, sovereign, respected rulers. In the next, they are children again. Their bodies are small, weak, and underdeveloped. Their voices are high. Their royal robes are gone, replaced by simple school clothes. This is a terrifying forced de-aging, an existential regression. They have lost 15 years of growth, 15 years of identity. Imagine the sheer psychological dissonance, possessing the memories, the wisdom, the trauma, and the political acumen of a 30-year-old adult, but being trapped in the body of a 12-year-old boy. This is the true horror of the wardrobe. It is a liminal space that gives and takes with equal and different force. The world celebrated in The Wizard of Oz, a return to the safety of childhood, is presented here as the ultimate punishment. They did not just lose Narnia, they lost their adult selves. Now we must analyze this trauma of double loss through the lens of our protagonist, Edmund Pevensie. For Peter, Susan, and Lucy, the loss is heartbreaking. It is the loss of a paradise. For Edmund, it is catastrophically worse. His 15-year reign as King Edmund the Just was not just a job. It was his active, daily penance. It was the psychological mechanism by which he balanced the unpayable debt of the stone table. He earned his redemption. He spent over a decade meticulously rebuilding his identity, transforming himself from the traitor into the just. He proved to himself, to his siblings, and to Aslan that the sacrifice was not in vain. And in one single jarring moment, the wardrobe steals that identity. He is no longer King Edmund the Just, the respected judge who helped build a civilization. He is once again just Edmund Pevensie, the nasty, spiteful schoolboy, the refugee. The achievement of his redemption has been invalidated. He is right back where he started, but now his child's mind contains the adult memory of his crime, the full, visceral horror of Aslan's execution, and the fleeting memory of a kingship that the real world will never ever acknowledge. This is the shame of the title immortalized. He is now trapped in a state of profound alienation, a traumatized veteran of a cosmic war, living in a world of children who are worried about school lessons. He is isolated not just from his peers, but from his own body. The narrative of the Pevensie children does not end with their regression to childhood. The deep magic is not done with them. In the subsequent story, Prince Caspian, the children are pulled back into Narnia, but this is not the triumphant homecoming they crave. It is perhaps the most profound and cruelest psychological twist in the entire saga. 1 year has passed for them in the front rooms, our world, where they are struggling to reintegrate as traumatized, de-aged veterans. But when they are pulled back through the threshold, this time a mundane train station, reinforcing the liminal space concept that any place can be a broken door, they do not arrive in their golden age. They arrive 1,300 Narnian years after they left. This is the horror of the temporal disconnect, a concept we explored in Lovecraft and the Backrooms. Their Narnia is gone. It is not just changed, it is dead. The castle they ruled from, Caer Paravel, is a cold, silent seaside ruin, overgrown with ivy and forgotten by time. This is the ultimate trauma of the ghost. This is the ultimate invalidating trauma. Imagine returning to the place of your greatest achievement, your 15-year reign as a wise and just monarch, only to find it is now a forgotten historical footnote, a dark age myth that the new inhabitants, the Telmarines, deny ever existed. The talking animals have been silenced. The dwarfs are in hiding. The trees have fallen asleep. The very magic has been suppressed. The children are not just kings without a kingdom. They are ghosts. They are archaeological relics in their own lifetime. They have lost their paradise not just by leaving it, but by being forced to witness its corpse. This loss fundamentally re-traumatizes each sibling, forcing them to confront their own identities. Peter, the High King, is consumed by arrogance and rage, desperate to reclaim the authority he lost. He is no longer the magnificent. He is an angry boy trying to prove he is still a man, leading to catastrophic tactical errors. Susan, the gentle, becomes cynical and pragmatic, her faith in the unseen Aslan shattered by the cold, hard reality of the ruins. Lucy, the valiant, is the only one who still believes, but she is now gaslit by her own siblings, told that her faith is a childish memory. But how does this new trauma affect Edmund? This is the core of the shame thesis. Edmund, unlike Peter, has already hit rock bottom. He has already been the traitor, faced the witch, and understood the price of the stone table. His shame inoculated him against the sin of pride. He has no ego left to break. In Prince Caspian, Edmund undergoes a profound role reversal. He is no longer the petulant doubter. He is the voice of cynical reason and pragmatism. He is the shadow counselor. While Peter's ego causes him to stumble, Edmund is the one who sees the threats clearly. He is the one who trusts Lucy's vision of Aslan, not because he is pure, but because he knows he cannot afford to doubt the deity he owes an infinite debt to. This return to a dead Narnia is a new test. It is a test of his redemption. And the most terrifying moment of this test is the story's true psychological climax, the return of the White Witch. The shame that defined him in the first book is about to be resurrected, and he is the only Pevensie truly equipped to face it. The Pevensie's return to a dead Narnia in Prince Caspian is a profound trauma. but it serves a vital psychological function for our protagonist of shame, King Edmund. His entire 2,300-year-old legacy as the Just has been erased. He is, once again, a child in a land he does not understand, facing a new totalitarian regime, the Telmarines. This regression could have broken him, forcing him back into the petulant, cynical boy from the first story. But it does not. The trauma of the stone table and the subsequent debt forged his character into something resilient. He has already faced the abyss. This new, ruined Narnia is simply a different kind of challenge. The ultimate test of his redemption, the final confrontation with his shame, occurs deep underground, in the ruins of Aslan's How, where the stone table itself is kept. This is the ground zero of his trauma. Here, a desperate faction of Narnians, led by the cynical dwarf Nicabric, a werewolf and a hag, have lost faith in Aslan, who has not answered their calls. They decide to turn to a different power, an older, colder, and more reliable one, the White Witch, Jadis. This scene is the philosophical heart of the entire shame thesis. Nicabric and his cabal begin a dark ritual, a summoning, to resurrect Jadis from her state of dissolution. This is not just a physical threat. It is a psychological summoning aimed directly at Edmund and Peter. The hag and the werewolf are not just monsters, they are archetypes. They represent the old, pre-Aslanian magic, the chaos and hunger that the witch represented. When the magical ice wall appears, and the ethereal, skeletal form of Jadis begins to cohere, she does not turn to Peter, the High King. She turns to Edmund. She offers him her hand. This is the single most terrifying moment of Edmund's life, far worse than the stone table. The stone table was a punishment for his mistake. This moment is a temptation to repeat it. This is the manjar turco, Turkish delight, all over again, but in its purest, most powerful form. It is the addiction all over again. It is the voice of his original shame, whispering that he was always hers, that his redemption as the Just was a lie, and that he should return to her service. This is the ultimate test. Peter the High King is paralyzed. He is the magnificent, the good, and he is frozen by the sheer, impossible nature of the evil returning. But Edmund the Just, Edmund the traitor, knows this evil. He has lived with its shame for 1,300 years. He recognizes the call of the Vecchio. He sees the witch not as a queen, but as his dealer, his abuser, his tormentor. He sees the source of his entire psychological fracturing. In that instant, Edmund's arc is completed. He does not hesitate. He does not need to be saved. He acts. He draws his sword and shatters the ice wall, destroying the apparition. This act is the final definitive rejection of his past. He is not just saving Peter or Narnia. He is saving himself. He is killing the ghost that has haunted him since childhood. He is slaying the memory of his own addiction. In the first book, Aslan had to die to pay for Edmund's shame. In the second book, Edmund has become strong enough to destroy the source of that shame himself. He proves finally that he is King Edmund the Just, not because a lion told him so, but because, when faced with the choice, he actively chose justice over his old addiction. The narrative of Edmund's shame does not conclude with his victory over the witch's ghost. He must face one final devastating test in the Voyage of the Dawn Treader. This story is often seen as a lighter, more adventurous sea epic, but for Edmund, it is a harrowing psychological sequel. He and Lucy return to Narnia, this time accidentally pulling their spiteful, cynical, and thoroughly modern cousin, Eustace Scrubb, with them. This is a deliberate narrative choice by C.S. Lewis. Eustace is not just a new character, he is a direct, upgraded reflection of the boy Edmund used to be. Eustace is the traitor archetype reincarnated. He is selfish, greedy, mocks Narnia, and despises his cousins. For Edmund, this is not just an annoying relative, it is a ghost. He is forced to look at a living, breathing mirror of his own past, shame, the very personality he spent 15 years as king trying to destroy. This entire voyage, therefore, becomes Edmund's final exam. Can he, the Just, guide this new traitor to redemption? Or will he, in his annoyance, Reject Eustace as he himself was once rejected. The most terrifying and psychologically dense part of this journey is the Dragon Island. This sequence is a masterclass in body horror and the physical manifestation of internal corruption. Eustace, driven by his selfish, greedy, dragonish thoughts, wanders off during a storm. He stumbles upon a dragon's hoard of treasure. As he sleeps on the gold, his greed physically rewrites his biology. He becomes a dragon. This is the Narnian universe enforcing its core law. You are what you think. This is the ultimate shame made flesh. Edmund's corruption, the Turkish Delight, was internal, a secret sickness of the soul. Eustace's corruption is external. His monstrosity is now visible to the entire world. He is literally trapped inside a scaled, reptilian, non-human body. He is now the ultimate other, an abomination. He can no longer speak. He can only roar. He can no longer interact. He can only terrify. He is completely, totally isolated. This is where Edmund's role becomes critical. While the other sailors see a monster to be feared or killed, Edmund and Lucy see a victim. Edmund, having been the traitor, is the only one who can truly empathize with the monster. He looks at the weeping dragon and does not see a threat. He sees himself, the boy in the witch's castle, trapped by his own greed. This is the moment Edmund's trauma becomes his strength. His shame allows him to connect with Eustace's shame. The story then pivots to the redemption, which in true Umbral Fables fashion is not gentle. Aslan, the deity figure, does not forgive the dragon. He dismantles him. Aslan appears in a vision and, in an act of terrifying symbolic violence, undragons Eustace. The book describes it as the lion tearing the dragon's skin off with his claws. This is not a magical poof. It is a representation of the agonizing, excruciating process of shedding one's old, corrupt self. It is the terrible fate of the stone table, recontextualized. Edmund, watching this, or sensing it, understands. He understands that to be reborn in the Narnian universe, one must be psychologically flayed alive. The shame must be torn away, leaving the raw new self behind. This voyage proves that the curse of Aslan is cyclical. It finds the traitor, Edmund Eustace, and breaks him, only to rebuild him as a stronger, sadder, and just king. The psychological trials of the voyage of the Dawn Treader are not limited to the body horror of the dragon transformation. The true final test of the soul is a location, a place that serves as the ultimate liminal space in the Narnian multiverse, the Dark Island. This is perhaps the most terrifying concept C.S. Lewis ever created, a place so philosophically horrifying that the cinematic adaptations barely dare to touch it. The Dawn Treader sails into a patch of ocean covered in an unnatural, oppressive, and absolute darkness. It is a fog of pure black, a void on the map. The crew, one by one, begins to fall silent, oppressed by a growing, nameless dread. This is not the fear of a physical threat, like the White Witch or a sea monster. This is the fear of the unknown itself, the absence of reality. This is the Narnian equivalent of the Backrooms, Level 0, or the Lovecraftian Void. It is a place where the rules of nature are suspended, a glitch in the fabric of the world. But it is worse than the Backrooms because the Dark Island is not empty. It is a place where dreams come true. This is the central, terrifying premise. To a healthy mind, this might sound like a paradise, but to the minds of the sailors, battle-worn, traumatized, and carrying the shame of their pasts, like Edmund and Eustace, this is the ultimate curse. When your dreams come true, what does that mean? It does not mean fantasies of wealth or power. It means the nightmares. It means the repressed anxieties, the secret guilts, the formless, crawling fears that live in the deepest, darkest trenches of your subconscious. The island is a psychological mirror. It is an environment that reads your mind and manifests your inner demons as physical reality. This is the info hazard of Rocco's basilisk made manifest. Your own thoughts become the weapon that attacks you. The crew is suddenly plunged into a waking nightmare. They begin to hear sounds, see shapes in the dark, and feel their deepest, most private terrors closing in. The horror is that you cannot fight these monsters. How do you draw a sword against your own anxiety? How do you shoot an arrow at your own guilt? The island is a panopticon of the soul, a prison where the walls are made of your own trauma. This is the final agonizing test for Edmund. He has faced his shame physically. He confronted the witch. He saw his reflection in Eustace. But this island forces him to confront the shame that remains, the deep, formless, subconscious dread that no amount of good deeds as King Edmund the Just could ever fully erase. The darkness forces him to relive the cold of the witch's castle, the memory of the stale bread, the sound of the jeering mob at the stone table. The island whispers, "You are still the traitor. You never changed." This is the ultimate dark night of the soul, where the self is forced to confront its own internal corruption without any external enemy to blame. The crew is driven to the point of madness, ready to turn on each other, until they are saved by the deeper magic. They do not fight their way out. They cannot. They are saved only when Aslan, the deity figure, sends an albatross, a symbol of grace, and a beam of light to guide them. This reinforces the central, terrifying thesis of Narnia's theology. The self is not enough. The human psyche, when left alone with its own darkness, will always fail. It always requires an external divine intervention to save it from its own dreams. This is the ultimate expression of the unpayable debt. Edmund is reminded, one last time, that he is utterly powerless without his savior. The shame is not just his past. It is his permanent condition, a darkness that only Aslan's light can keep at bay. We have analyzed the shame of Edmund, the boy who betrayed and was forced into a life of atonement. But the Narnian saga holds one final, colder, and perhaps more disturbing psychological horror, reserved for the only character who survived, Queen Susan the Gentle. In the final book of the Chronicle, The Last Battle, a cataclysmic event occurs, and the Friends of Narnia are called home to Aslan's country, a final celestial paradise. But there is one conspicuous absence. Peter, Edmund, and Lucy are there. Professor Kirk, Polly, Eustace, and Jill are there, but Susan is not. When her name is mentioned, her siblings, now existing in this afterlife, speak of her with a chilling, almost cold dismissal. "My sister Susan," Peter says, "is no longer a friend of Narnia. She has been expelled. She is the only Pevensie left behind in the Shadowlands, our world, while her entire family, parents included, move on without her. This is the ultimate left-behind anxiety, an act of profound spiritual abandonment." To understand this horror, we must analyze Susan's crime. The text states that she is lost in the nylons and lipsticks and invitations. A superficial reading, and a dangerous one, bordering on misogyny, would suggest she was damned for the sin of vanity, for growing up and embracing her femininity. But the true investigation must look deeper. The nylons and lipsticks are not the disease. They are the symptoms. They are the desperate coping mechanisms of a deeply traumatized woman. Susan is the ultimate victim of the Narnian psychological experiment. Let us review her specific accumulated trauma. Like her siblings, she was a refugee of the Blitz. Like Lucy, she witnessed the ritualistic public execution of the deity figure Aslan at the stone table. Like her brothers, she was forcibly de-aged, losing 15 years of her adult identity as a queen when she fell back through the wardrobe. Then she was forced to return to Narnia, only to find her kingdom, Cair Paravel, was a ruin 300 years later. Susan Pevensie saw her kingdom, her god, and her own adulthood die. She experienced more trauma than any of the others, except perhaps Edmund. And yet she is the one punished. Why? Because her response to the trauma was different. Edmund processed his shame, the internal trauma, through action, atonement, justice, and service. Susan processes her trauma, the external trauma, through denial. She chose, consciously or subconsciously, to reject the source of her pain. She decided that Narnia was not real. She convinced herself that the execution, the talking animals, and the 300-year gap were all just a silly game they played as children. The lipsticks and nylons are not her new gods. They are her anesthetic. They are the symbols of the real, mundane, safe, predictable English world that she desperately clings to in order to keep the memories of the stone table at bay. She is the survivor of a cosmic war who is desperately trying to convince herself she was never a soldier. This is the true shame of the title. Not Edmund's guilt, but Susan's profound pathological shame of the truth itself. She is ashamed of the magic, ashamed of the trauma, ashamed of the very thing that made her a queen. This is the final ruthless moral of the Narnian universe. The allegory is absolute. The Narnian system, ruled by Aslan, is not a system of unconditional love. It is a system of total, unconditional belief. Edmund, the traitor, is saved because he believed in his guilt and accepted the system. Eustace, the dragon, was saved because he believed in his monstrosity. Susan, the gentle, the skeptic, the one who tried to find a middle ground by growing up, is the only one who is damned. In this universe, the traitor is infinitely more valuable than the apostate, one who denies the faith. The horror is that Aslan's country has no room for those who lose their religion. It is an absolutist system. Susan is not expelled for being evil. She is expelled for being lukewarm. She is the ultimate tragic figure of the Narnian mythos, not a monster, not a villain, but a psychologically broken survivor whose chosen coping mechanism, denial, was the one sin her God would not or could not forgive. She is left alone, a ghost in the front rooms, forever barred from the paradise where her family lives on, all because she found the trauma of magic too much to bear. The Narnian saga concludes with its darkest, most cynical, and most philosophically terrifying installment, the last battle. This story is the final brutal Umbral Fables thesis on the nature of belief and the mechanisms of corruption. It is the end of the world, but it is not an apocalypse of fire and trumpets. It is an apocalypse of lies. The central horror is not a witch or a tyrant. It is a master manipulator, an old, ugly, and cunning ape named Shift. This is C.S. Lewis's ultimate allegory for the Antichrist or the falso messias. But in a secular psychological reading, Shift is something far more modern. He is the personification of propaganda, political opportunism, and the useful idiot. The story begins with Shift finding a lion's skin floating in the river. He does not see it as a curiosity, he sees it as an opportunity. He forces his companion, a simple-minded but well-meaning donkey named Puzzle, to wear the lion's skin. He then presents this pathetic, terrified creature to the Narnians as the returned Aslan. This is the ultimate dark inversion of the skinwalker mythos. Where the skinwalker chose to wear the pelt to gain power, Puzzle is a victim, forced into the skin against his will. He is the first casualty of the lie. The horror of the last battle is its depiction of how quickly a society, even one built on faith, will crumble in the face of a convincing lie. Shift, the ape, becomes the man behind the curtain, the false prophet who interprets the will of the false god, the donkey. He gains total control, not through magic, but through information control. He keeps Aslan hidden in a stable, only showing him at night, by firelight, to maintain the illusion. He creates an atmosphere of fear and secrecy. This is a terrifyingly accurate depiction of how totalitarian regimes begin. They do not seize power with armies. They seize it by controlling the narrative. Shift's shame, to use our core theme, is his profound cynicism. He does not believe in anything, which makes him the perfect manipulator of those who believe in everything. The consequences of this false messias are immediate and devastating. The very fabric of Narnian society dissolves. Shift, the ape, begins to destroy the world from within. He makes a dark alliance with the Calormenes, the enemy empire, arguing that Aslan and the Calormene god, Tash, are the same entity, Tashlan. This is the ultimate cynical act, the blending of all faiths into a meaningless bureaucratic super-religion designed only to consolidate his own power. This breaks the Narnians. Their faith, the bedrock of their reality, is shattered. Some fall into despair, like the dwarfs, deciding all gods are lies. Others become radical faithful, like the protagonist, King Tyrion, clinging to the true Aslan while the world burns. The horror here is the death of truth. The lie is so effective, so pervasive, that truth becomes irrelevant. The ape has successfully gaslit an entire nation. This is the same horror we saw in Oz, but with a fatal conclusion. The Wizard of Oz was a humbug who handed out placebos. Shift is a nihilist who is willing to burn the entire world down for his own comfort, apples and nuts. This is the final, darkest shame of the Narnian experiment. Its society was so dependent on an external savior that it was utterly defenseless against a clever fraud who knew how to impersonate that savior. The final act of the last battle is the philosophical and literal apocalypse of the Narnian universe, and it is here that the story's shame thesis finds its most terrifying conclusion. The ape, Shift, in his cynical quest for power, has committed the ultimate sin. He has equated Aslan with the Calormene deity, Tash. But Shift, in his profound ignorance, believed Tash was just a story, a boogeyman the Calormenes used to scare their children. He was wrong. The horror of the last battle is the revelation that all the gods are real. By invoking the name of Tash in a place of power, the stable, Shift accidentally performs a real summoning. He opens a liminal space, a doorway, and something answers. This is the ultimate info hazard, like Rocco's basilisk made manifest. Speaking the name of the monster is enough to bring it into existence. Tash is not a simple demon in the Western sense. He is a pure, Lovecraftian cosmic horror. He is described as a formless, ancient, anti-life entity, a cloud of darkness with a beaked head and multiple arms, exuding a cold that is not natural. He is the other god, the embodiment of a different, older, and deeply alien system of belief. This is the ultimate Gnostic horror. The false messiahs, Shift, has accidentally summoned the true demiurge, the god of this world, a being of pure, cold indifference and malice. The stable which Shift used to hide his fake god, the donkey in the lion's skin, becomes the ultimate backrooms portal. It is a simple wooden shed that is now, inexplicably, a gateway to two different realities. For those who enter in fear, like the Calormenes, it is a gateway to Tash. For those who enter in faith, like the protagonists, it is a gateway to Aslan's country. The stable door is the final judgment. This is where the narrative shatters. The protagonists are forced into a desperate, hopeless battle against a technologically superior army and a supernatural entity. And they lose. The good guys are defeated. The last king of Narnia is thrown into the stable as a sacrifice. This is the ultimate despair. The world has ended, the liars have won, and the true monster has come to collect. But the horror does not end there. Aslan, the true deity figure, finally arrives. But he does not come to save Narnia. He comes to end it. This is the Ragnarok of the Narnian mythos, and it is one of the bleakest sequences in children's literature. Aslan, standing at the stable door, presides over the death of a universe. He does not fight Tash, he simply outranks him. He calls all living things, talking beasts, humans, dwarfs, and dumb animals, to himself. This is the final judgment. In a scene of terrifying cosmic finality, the creatures are forced to run towards the door. As they approach, they must look directly into Aslan's face. This is the ultimate moral test of the shame thesis. Those who look at him with love and faith, even if they were sinners like Edmund, are seen by him and pass through the door, disappearing from the world. Those who look at him with hatred, fear, or, in the case of the dwarfs, pure, cynical denial, simply cease to be. They become shadows and vanish. They are not just killed, they are unmade. Their existence is revoked. This is a cold, terrifying process of cosmic filtration. The horror is that Aslan, the good god, is actively participating in the great silence. He is dismantling the experiment. He calls Father Time, a giant sleeping figure, to awaken and blow his horn. The sun and moon are extinguished. The seas rise. The land is flooded. Narnia is uncreated. plunging back into the void from which it was sung. The shame of the title finds its final, absolute form. The entire Narnian world was a failed state, a shadowland, a temporary flawed copy of the real world, Aslan's country. This confirms the purgatory theory of Oz. The world the children loved was just a test. They were refugees from the start, and they are refugees once again, evacuated from a dying universe. The final inescapable verdict of this investigation is that the Chronicles of Narnia is not the simple, happy children's adventure Hollywood sold to us. It is a profound, dense, and psychologically brutal allegory about the nature of trauma, faith, and the crushing weight of shame. The entire narrative is a complex philosophical mechanism. The sanitization of Narnia was not just the removal of dark themes. It was the deliberate concealment of the story's core engine, a terrifying binary moral system that demands absolute submission. The true horror of Aslan's kingdom is not the White Witch. It is the realization that the kingdom's price of entry is the total annihilation of the skeptical self. The saga presents us with two parallel paths of trauma, two responses to the shame of the title. First, we have Edmund Pevensie. His journey is the thesis of guilt accepted. He is the sinner. He falls prey to addiction, the Turkish Delight. He betrays his blood, and his actions lead directly to the ritualistic public execution of the deity figure. His shame is active, burning, and profound. But because he accepts it, because he acknowledges his guilt, he is put on the path of redemption. This path is not gentle. It is agonizing. It is the path of the stone table, the path of the unpayable debt. His entire adult life as King Edmund the Just is a performance of penance, a psychological cage of gratitude. He is saved, but he is never truly free. He is forever defined by the trauma he caused. Then, we have the darker, colder, and more tragic path, the path of Queen Susan Pevensie. Susan is the thesis of trauma denied. She is the shame of the title, manifested as rejection. Susan witnessed the exact same horrors as Edmund. She saw the execution. She was de-aged and lost her adult identity. She saw her kingdom in ruins, 300 years later. But her response to this overwhelming trauma was not acceptance. It was denial. She is the ultimate, tragic survivor. She chose to forget. She rejected Narnia, convincing herself it was a silly game to protect her mind from the paralyzing memory of the stone table. The lipsticks and nylons are not her sin, they are her shield. They are her desperate attempt to anchor herself in the real, mundane world to escape the nightmare of the magical one. She is the survivor of a cosmic war who is desperately trying to convince herself she was never a soldier. This is the true shame of the title. Not Edmund's guilt, but Susan's profound, pathological shame of the truth itself. She is ashamed of the magic, ashamed of the trauma, ashamed of the very thing that made her a queen. This is the final, ruthless moral of the Narnian universe. The allegory is absolute. The Narnian system, ruled by Aslan, is not a system of unconditional love. It is a system of total, unconditional belief. Edmund, the traitor who believes, is granted eternal paradise. Susan, the traumatized skeptic who doubts, is expelled. She is abandoned, left behind as a ghost in our world, while her entire family is annihilated and taken to Aslan's country. This is the final, devastating, and sanitized secret of the lore. The horror is not that the witch is cruel, but that the lion is, in his own way, just as ruthless. His deeper magic is a system of total belief, and it has no room for the broken survivor who simply cannot bring herself to believe anymore. The shame of the title is, in the end, the story of two siblings, one who was broken by his guilt and one who was broken by his denial. If this deep, psychological investigation into the trauma and philosophy of Narnia resonated with you, you understand the mission of Umbral Fables. We do not accept the sanitized stories. We peel back the layers of childhood fantasy to find the dark, complex, and often uncomfortable adult truths hidden beneath. Leave a comment below. What is your verdict on the shame of Narnia? Was Susan's fate a just exclusion or a profound, tragic injustice? Your analysis is the final piece of this investigation. Subscribe to Umbral Fables as we continue to open the forbidden wardrobes and explore the shadows of the myths that built us. This is Umbral Fables. We leave you now, not with a lion, but with the cold shadow of the stone table. Look closely. The dark journey continues.